Alright, hey everybody, this is Lawrence from the Atheist Community in Milwaukee, and today I have James Kirk as my guest. And as James told me before this recording, he wanted to talk about the God of the Gaps argument, and also I think you said the complexity argument. You know, the whole intelligent design thing. Alright, so why don't you go ahead, and you said... Like, yes, I agree. It's obviously very popular, one of the most popular ones. Was there anything in recent times that got you to really want to just take it down?
Actually, today I created a YouTube video called Debunking the Complexity Argument, or Fine-Tuning Argument, right? That's another name for it. Debunking the fine-tuning argument for God. And obviously, I don't have the only video out there. There's other videos out there as well. And I had somebody replying on that video with the same arguments, not really addressing anything in there, but this whole thing about, oh, things are so complex and it would be more probable for a universe that doesn't support life than a universe that supports life. And it's basically this God of the gaps, and they try to use the definition of God to not answer to it. So everything they say, and it's so hypocritical to me, and it's so intellectually cowardice, because you hear them repeat over and over again, well, something couldn't just be, it had to have a beginning. It couldn't come from nothing. So there had to be something there. So they make all these arguments why the universe just couldn't come to be. But then, of course, they say, oh, well, none of those arguments apply to our God, though, because by definition, he's always been. So by definition, you can just throw your brains in a trash to think about that, and you don't even have to address it.
Yeah, special pleading has been a thing in way more than just this argument for God. It's been through so many things, even when it comes to moral issues. My favorite way of parodying the creationist logic is with an analogy. If I go to the beach and find some colorful pebbles and start placing them in a shot glass, I will never find one that fits perfectly in the shot glass. In fact, if I did, I would assume that the pebble must have been designed for the shot glass. Let's say I start pouring liquids into the glass. The liquid will fit the shape of the glass perfectly every time. It would be crazy for me to think the liquid was designed for the shot glass, because I'm comparing something malleable, like a liquid, to something solid, like a pebble. In the same way that some theist arguments would treat machines, which are not capable of reproduction and change over generations, to life, which is.
Yes. Yeah, I see a lens on a camera, and I know that it was designed for something, so therefore, yeah, the same thing applies to life. Or like you said, it's a different way of doing things when you talk about design and mechanical things, rather than life and how life evolved. But yeah, like you said, this thing comes up over and over again. Now your analogy of the water fitting into a glass perfectly reminds me, I think it was the author of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I think it was Adams, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But he said it would be like a puddle saying, wow, look, this hole I filled was designed just for me.
Sounds just about right.
Yeah, and I know Bill Nye, during that debate with Ham, well, Bill Nye used to work for Boeing and used to work for engines, and so he gets that, oh, well, when you're building that engine and all these parts, you know that was designed. But even in engineering, you see evolution. The design is not the same thing as the first flyable aircraft by the Wright brothers, and their craft that was able to achieve the goal certainly wasn't the first design. There was a ton of failures. So even with mechanical design, you still have failure after failure after failure before something that actually works. And an analogy I use is you look at the Egyptian pyramids. Before those were built, you have failures. Through archaeology, we've seen the failures. We've seen these collapsed pyramids. Now, if they had the perfect design, and let's call it a copy, and they went outside of Egypt and built this pyramid, you would not find any failures. You would find perfect efficiency. But that's not what we find in evolution. We don't see this perfect design and perfect efficiency. We see horrible efficiency. We see tons of failures. We see over 99% of the newly evolved species over time become extinct. So design is not what we see through nature.
Right, and then there's, I think my favorite one that Dawkins presented was the, I forgot what it's called, the something nerve of the giraffe that, yeah, you know which one I'm talking about.
I've
exactly.
seen the video.
Yeah, I forget what the nerve is called, though, but for everyone who doesn't know, it goes from, it's vocal cord?
It's like bite a lung. It's like, I can't remember, but if you Google Richard Dawkins giraffe, you're sure to find it.
Yeah,
sure.
The nerve goes from the brain down
like
the neck.
Close to the heart. Yep.
Yeah.
And in a giraffe, instead of being wired close to the heart, it goes all the way up their tremendously long neck and all the way back, which is completely obviously inefficient.
Yeah.
And that came from because in fish, it's close. So we saw evolution. This thing just takes a completely inefficient path, which, like you said, the whole purpose of this, it's not design, it's adaptation.
Yeah, and it really boggles my mind that they like to present evolution as a product of random chance. It's the exact opposite. It is the very non-random selection of random mutations.
Right.
One of my favorite ones, you know how they give you this bullshit probability equation, right? They give you something like, oh, it's just so improbable that our DNA would look just like this. You know, you range from 1 in a million to 1 in 5 times 10 to the 58th. I mean, and there was the one video where it was compared to finding the winning lottery ticket on the street and then continuing to find the winning lottery ticket on the street every day for 1,000 years. And it's this bogus probability equation. Because let's say we have 100 slots and 100 symbols that correspond to each of those slots. What's the probability that we put the symbols in their correct places? The first one would be 1 in 100. The second one would be 1 in 99, meaning the probability of us putting the first 2 symbols in the correct 2 spots would be 1 in 9,900. And then you keep doing that, and then I think it adds up to like 9.3 times 10 to the 157th, and that's just the first 10 slots. So when talking about fine-tuning, I bring that up because that's just 100 slots is improbable, but it doesn't matter. It's a non sequitur. And in my book, actually, in one of my quote-unquote proofs of unicorns is the fine-tuning argument for God. But, I mean, this is the fine-tuning argument, God's version of it. It goes, premise 1, there's a God. Premise 2, God fine-tuned the universe. Premise 3, God could have created a different universe, which he also would have fine-tuned. 4, the probability that God chose to create and fine-tune this universe is just too unlikely. 5, God did choose to create and fine-tune this universe. Therefore, God was fine-tuned by a fine-tuning unicorn, because the probability God would choose this universe to fine-tune is so unlikely.
None of their arguments solve anything. And like you said, it's hypocrisy because every single one of their arguments applies to their God. So yeah, what's the probability that God was fine-tuned to create the universe exactly fine-tuned as it's fine-tuned?
Yeah.
It's complete garbage. And one of the things I had in the video is, okay, you are the result of 1 out of 400 billion sperm and 1 out of 300 eggs. And if there's any change result, you could be someone different. And then your father was the result of 1 in 400 billion sperm and 1 out of 300 eggs. And the same for your mother, and so on and so on and so on. So the probability of you being you is this term infinitely improbable. And yet, here you are.
Yeah, if you throw a dart on an infinite ruler, it's going to hit somewhere.
It's going to hit somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly right. That's it. It's going to hit somewhere.
I think the special pleading that they do, because they say, oh, it's so complex, it must have had this even more so complex designer that for some reason doesn't need an explanation. But do you remember?
Exactly.
Do you remember the video where Megan Fox goes to the museum and there's this entire museum filled with fossils and diagrams and
yeah.
you know exactly which video I'm talking about.
Well, I saw The Armored Skeptic.
Yep, that one. And
I saw his review. That was hilarious.
Yeah, it was amazing. And my favorite part of that was when she said humans can't even build a properly working foot. That just proves that. No, I don't know what she said it proves, but it's like if we can't build a properly working foot, isn't that a testament to its evolution over millions of years instead of a creator?
Well, plus she tried to say that the dinosaurs were dragons. And there was one dinosaur that was called a dragon because the guy, whoever discovered it, called it a dragon.
Yep.
And so if somebody calls it names it a dragon who discovers it, that means it's a dragon.
Yep. Dracoris hogwartits or something
yes.
like that. Yeah.
So in other words, Harry Potter's real.
Yep. Also, yes, is what we should derive from that name. So when it comes to this special pleading, it's not only complexity. Actually, no. I mean, complexity is one of them, obviously. But then it also goes into good and evil, too, a little bit. But less on the moral side. When it comes to complexity, they say that God is beyond our realm of comprehension. And that works for a moral argument or for a complexity argument that we're talking about now. It works for either one, or they use it for either one, I should say. If I told you that I was my own father, that would be crazy. I would be laughed at, right? And when people would come to me and explain to me why I cannot possibly be my own father, all I would have to do is say, oh, well, see, maybe not as physics and genetics as you understand them, but us self-fathering people are beyond those laws. I would be laughed at, and I would be mocked, and I would completely deserve it.
Yes.
This is the special pleading, and I don't understand why it is so popular for creationists to use this. And you point it out to them, and they just say, yeah, so
they have no choice. I mean, it's that creationist that was on that HBO special, some pastor that said, if the Bible says 2 + 2 = 5, I will not question it. I will find a way to make it work. And that is the mindset that they have. So when they use deceit and when they're exposed over and over again as frauds, the reason why is they have no choice. They have no argument that can withstand a fair debate. They have no argument that has a chance in having a debate in good faith. So they use these tactics because they have no choice. I mean, imagine if you were in a position where no matter what, arguing that 2 + 2 = 5. You're not going to be able to do that without blowing a whole lot of smoke and then using a whole lot of bullcrap. You have no choice.
Yeah, I think it really serves as a testament to the fact that when it comes to most of these creationists, is that that's the only leg that they're standing on. That is their defining characteristic, like a flamingo or something. But when it comes to skeptics, when it comes to actual rational thinkers, we define ourselves by lots of things, and just simply breaking one of those isn't going to completely change our view. I mean, if I found out tomorrow there's a God, sure, I wouldn't be an atheist, but I would still, well, I mean, if I found it out, if I had knowledge, then I would be a Gnostic theist. But when it came to moral questions, I would still have those same moral questions that I have now. There would be no reason why evolution couldn't be true. There would be no reason why the Big Bang wouldn't be true.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, evolution would still be true, and obviously there's many Christians that accept evolution, and it seems to be more of a problem in the United States than in Europe. But if the truth is important to you, and Thomas Huxley said we should follow reason wherever it takes us, and follow the evidence wherever it takes us. It seems to me that right now some atheists are being attacked for doing this, and they're being told, well, you're not recognizing the identity of religion and the comfort. And it's like, well, if you're going to follow truth, and that's going to be the guide in your life, then that's what you follow. And the fact that it makes people feel good, and yet it contains passages that are completely ignorant, or passages that justify murder and justify slavery, I guess they expect, the atheists should let that go. Oh, the new atheists are so mean and so pushy, and they're jerks. And it's a load of crap. Who has the best argument? That's what should matter. And if you don't have the best argument, then don't make your emotional pleas about how your religion is your identity or makes you feel good. And don't accuse atheists of somehow being insensitive or being provocative when Christians and Muslims claim to follow religious text that calls for our people to be murdered and tortured forever. Sorry, but we are not the offensive ones here. You don't get to call us the offensive ones when you claim allegiance to this text that calls for us to be murdered and tortured forever.
Yeah, the really interesting thing about I did a segment on this for I make videos for this thing, Secular TV. Do you know what that is?
Okay.
Do you know what that is?
Heard of that.
Yeah. So I'm one of the creators there, and I had one video where we talked about fact or fiction. When is it okay for people to believe something that makes them feel good? And we pretty much landed on the conclusion that as long as it's not detrimental to them or themselves. And, I'm all fine for people having their fun. Like when people post, those astrology posts.
Right.
That it's all bullshit. Not
Right.
only astrology, but even that version of astrology is not even real astrology, but that's for something else. I'll save that for later. And I So I call them out on their shit, or the people that try to post stuff on acupuncture or homeopathy. And if it makes them feel good, that's great. But they need to understand that it's bullshit. And they one of these days, if they truly believe it, they might do something that will inevitably hurt them. Like if they have cancer or something and someone says, "Oh, take these homeopathic drugs." And we're like, "No, don't do that. That won't help anything." And
Right.
so it's a really thin line.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the most dangerous one are the so-called Christian scientists, and it's funny how ironic science is used when it's used with Christian scientists. Of course, not being scientists that are Christian, but that own sect, or Scientology has the word science, but obviously it has nothing to do with it. But absolutely, if it's harmful. And I've heard stories with these people where, a child breaks their leg and they're praying over it for it to get better or what have you. But in these stories, thankfully, someone has common sense and takes the poor kid to the hospital.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's when it does get dangerous. But yeah, horoscopes, fortune cookies, I mean, usually it's a bunch of vague fluff, like something nice is going to happen to you today, so it's not really harmful. But at the Myth Information Conference, I brought up the Analects of Confucius, the Apology, accounts of Socrates written by Plato. And to think of, people say, well, it gives me some good guidance, and look at, some of these things that are good in it. Why would you follow something? And this is kind of like gets into this thing that whatever his name is, that one apologist, where religious scripture doesn't matter, and people will just do what they want to do, and if they're good, then the bad things don't matter. I mean, of course the bad things matter, and of course the bad things have caused great harm over the years. And why look at a book that has some nice things, it has horrible things, when you have sources out there that don't have the horrible things? I read the Analects of Confucius. I don't see anywhere where Confucius is deliberately ordering the execution of children. And I'm not saying anybody should think, oh, this is the divine word of God. I'm not saying this should be your only book. But if you're looking for moral guidance, put that in your library, obviously with many other books, but books that give philosophy, timeless philosophy, give books with guidance on behaving ethically that don't contain passages that condone slavery and murder.
Right. And that actually reminds me. So yesterday I was writing for my next book, and I'm like, I don't know, 12,000 words in, good enough for me. I started it right after Myth Information. But either way, I was just kind of writing, and I asked myself, because the premise of the book, I'll just explain this quick. I talk about why we're morbidly curious, and the thing that I found was we're morbidly curious because we like to scream. And SCREAM is an acronym for strength, catharsis, reality, exploration, acceptance, and meaning. And I tie those same reasons into someone's belief in God and into someone's belief in aliens. The book is called An Alien Named Jesus because that's going to sell. But so I question, because in section 4 of exploration, I go over physical exploration, going to other lands, but then I say, well, there are lots of different kind of explorations. There's physical, there's mental, and then there's moral exploration, and there could be more. I'm probably missing a lot. But I said morality, by definition, is the differentiation of intentions, decisions, and actions between those that are good or right and those that are bad or wrong. From this definition, we can conclude that in order to be a moral agent, we must evaluate moral claims to be good or bad, or right or wrong. Objectivity, in this sense, would refer to an absolute standard of goodness. If there exists an absolute standard of goodness, i.e., what is moral, then morality would not exist because there would be no one that could be a moral agent, because morality could not be a product of something that is not a moral agent. Thus, if there is an absolute standard of goodness, morality would not exist. We can conclude that if morality exists, i.e., there are moral agents assessing moral claims, then there cannot exist an absolute standard of goodness. And to me, this made perfect sense to me, because I'm not arguing against objective morality. I'm arguing against the linguistics of it. I'm saying that the term is nonsensical.
Well, and the biggest problem with that, with them saying, oh, my God has objective moral truth or absolute moral truth, is the horrible, immoral actions of their God. I mean, it makes it a joke. I mean, thou shalt not kill sounds good, but right after saying it, when Moses slaughters his own people and then slaughters other people, it makes it a joke. I mean, how can anyone take it seriously? How can anyone with a straight face talk about, oh, my Bible has thou shalt not kill? I mean, how could they say that without cracking up? Because that is like, out of all the commandments, that's the biggest joke in the Bible.
Yeah, maybe it's kind of like communism, where it's good on paper, but in practice it's horrible.
Well, communism's never existed. I mean, I've looked into the definition of communism.
Yeah, I agree.
Everybody has the same amount of wealth, and everybody has the same amount of say-so in everything. And the closest that's ever existed is a monarchy where the peasant class had nothing and no say in anything. So yes, they're equal, but then you always had this ruling class. In the countries that call themselves communist, China's not communist. They're a capitalist socialist mix like we are. They're just heavier on the socialism. There's definitely more controls the government has on free speech and that sort of thing. I think Cuba calls themselves communist, but obviously that's a dictatorship.
Yeah.
North Korea calls them communist, but that's
a theocracy. Let's be honest. That's a theocracy.
Christopher Hitchens said North Korea was the most religious country on earth. It's just like 1984, and when the dear leader or supreme leader or whoever the past is, these dead people still have positions in government. So I think he referred to it as a necropolacy or something like that. And then there's stories about when they were born, the birds were singing. And in Korean, apparently there's a rumor going out that this current leader doesn't use the washroom.
Yep, he doesn't have to poop. I think he was. Oh my God, I'm pretty sure there's a unicorn somewhere in there. Pretty sure he was born of a unicorn or something like that. Yep.
And yeah, that is one insane country, and you've seen where the indoctrination that has to be the country, as bad as Islamist theocracies are. North Korea has to be the most extreme indoctrination, where it is so difficult for any kind of individual, personal, independent thinking can happen. because they control the media and it's a nonstop 24-hour news cycle of how wonderful your leader is. And it's just the most blatant form of brainwashing, indoctrination. And Christopher Hitchens was right. I think when he was covering it, he said, I don't want to make a 1984 reference. I'm not going to do it. I refuse to do it. But he wound up having to do it. He had no choice. I mean, that's really what it is going on in that country.
It truly is. It truly is. And I can't wait for the moment, for the day where there is not only just organized religion gone, not only when we take away, or when faith completely disappears, not only that, but when just, I can't really describe it, when a crowd mentality goes away, when the superorganism called the crowd goes away, where people would actually start fact-checking everything they hear. You know, they don't really exactly take it on faith. I mean, they do technically, they don't even question it. But I cannot wait for that day. I mean, I'll probably be dead by then. But if that day happens in my lifetime, I will be all set. I'll be like, yep, kill me now. It can only get worse from here.
Well, the only thing we can do is it's all about the dial and trying to turn that dial, a little bit in our direction. But unfortunately, I don't see us absolutely getting rid of it. It's just hopefully we make some gains. But unfortunately, history is up and down. It's not a steady progression. I mean, recently in the United States, as far as rights, obviously we've made a lot of great progress and recent progress, extremely recent progress in regards to human history. But you look at some of these other places like Iran, after their revolution in 1979, they got rid of one dictator and got one that was even worse, and they went backwards, as far as rights and free thinking, and we have an individual mind. So, unfortunately, it's a scary thing where you're hoping things will get better, but things can go the other way as well.
Yeah, luckily, actually good statistics for us here. Though, I think, is it in the U.S.? I'm pretty sure it's the U.S. The U.S. population of Christians is down from,
right.
In what was it? In 2007, I believe, it was 76%, and now it's 70.
Yeah.
So good news there. People are moving over to, surprisingly, to Judaism and Islam and Buddhism, but we are getting more atheists too.
Right, and that is good news. The bad news is we have a U.S. Supreme Court that we don't know what's going to do. I mean, they've got some absolute lunatics on that court that we can't vote out, that are there through life, and that's a very scary thing. So even though the numbers are going away, this country has the potential, especially when you see some of these presidential contenders on the Republican side. This country has the potential to go backwards and move away from our secular roots and be taken over by these Christian fanatics. So,
I mean, I see where you're getting that, but I just had a thought, and I may be wrong. But you know how throughout the timeline of American history, we have, different generations. We have the baby boomers, we have Generation X, and
right.
then we have the millennials. The millennials are a more secular group for the most part. They're the ones that are more likely to listen to reason and logic. So hopefully when they are old enough to run for office positions, things will start to look up. Hopefully.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely, I hope so. I mean, they're the ones, and obviously you're in that group.
yeah.
Unfortunately, there's a whole lot of debt and a whole lot of issues you're going to be inheriting, but the future is with you. And
Great, all the pressure's on me now. Thanks, buddy.
no pressure, but yeah, absolutely, and hopefully that new generation will come in and be more secular and be more scientifically educated and aware. But you know that science education in our schools is another battlefront going on. So yeah, absolutely. There's hope, and it seems like with certain things like the general feelings about gay marriage and more acceptance of the gay population, that's definitely the right direction as far as human progress. So we're seeing some positive indicators, but just being familiar with history like I am, I'm always cautious, because I've seen in history where things what was gained was lost and lost quickly. So we have to be vigilant.
Well, I will do all I can do for this
Yep.
next generation. But aside from that, we are unfortunately running out of time. I have to go smoke my life away in a hookah bar now. So, thank you for joining me today, and hopefully in the future we can talk again. This was fun.
Sure, absolutely, Lawrence. And you are doing something for your generation and doing this work that you do. So very much appreciated. And obviously, the more the merrier. The more next generation people and involved with this and active in debate, not just being passive, but being active. The more the better.
Oh yeah, that's an amazing intellectual state you're talking about. Yeah. All right, so thank you for joining me today,
All right.
and everyone out on the interwebs, thank you. Good night.